following program on Ada Derana 24 is classified as PG. It is intended for younger children in the company of an adult. It may contain some suggestive dialogue, infrequent coarse language, some sexual situations, or some moderate violence. Viewer discretion is advised. The following program contains opinions of the participants and does not reflect the views and beliefs of the Derana Media Network. The network believes in a safe space for all ideas to be expressed without any censorship and on its duty to create such a platform for free speech. Viewer discretion is strictly advised.
Welcome to TPS, a program that has been carefully curated to answer questions that you might have for almost all political parties. Our responsibility here is to ensure that you get the truth and the exact truth. Now, joining in on today's discussion, unfortunately, we did reach out to members from the ruling party. We were not actually heard for, and they have not been able to join us. So today, instead of a debate, dear viewers, we'll be having a quick discussion. On to my right-hand side, we have former Minister of Parliament, Honorable Tharaka Balasuriya from the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And on to my left, we have former Minister of Parliament, Anura Priyadharshana Yapa, Attorney at Law, representing the Sri Lanka Podujana Eksat Peramuna. Welcome to the show. Now, gentlemen, today's discussion is quite simple. We're here to talk about exactly how the country is doing in your own respective opinions and that of your respective parties. How do you measure up what the current government is doing about Sri Lanka and its development? I would, of course, like to open up the discussion with you, Mr. Tharaka. What do you think?
Well, Sanuvi, at the outset, I must correct you that I don't represent a political party at the moment. There was a few state ministers and ministers of the last government who supported Ranil Wickremesinghe, and thereafter we have remained neutral and we haven't attached ourselves to any single political party. So I think, taking that into consideration, I will try to give a very fair assessment of what I feel is happening. I personally think that the current government has been very pragmatic. Now, I'm saying that it has been pragmatic because it's following mainly the previous government's policies. Okay, so now there is an issue. It could be an ethical issue, it could be a moral issue, that the fact that they came into power promising a heap of things to the public, promising the debt relief, promising reliefs to the public, and but none of that has taken place. So that's a different issue altogether. Now, I think one of the things which I remember is that they said Kanchana was taking 150 rupees or something as a commission, and I can't quite remember how much they stated. So if this commission was not taken, then the fuel prices can be reduced. But we have seen that they are going forward with the same the policies of the price formula. But I think again I come back to my original statement that it's been pragmatic because actually, given the circumstances, there's not much room for any government to maneuver. So they have been pragmatic in the sense that they have not, they didn't start a new debt restructuring program. They continued with the same debt restructuring program which was commenced by the previous government. How the people see, whether they were duped into voting for the current government, whether or how they will react to the unfulfilled promises, I don't know. That's a different issue altogether. But I also feel that now just following the policies of the last government is not sufficient. Okay, you need to have the structural changes which is needed in the economy. Of course, they've been, emphasizing on, bringing a different political culture, reducing corruption, and all those. I don't know whether there has been a meaningful reduction in corruption. So if there has been a meaningful reduction in corruption, let's say in terms of our government revenue, we should see increases in the government revenue. Now, last year, by about September, the customs recorded 1 billion in revenue, 1 trillion in revenue. So that was not the effort of this government; it was the effort of the previous government. But I don't really see any. Of course, there's been a lot of rhetoric, but I don't know whether the rhetoric has materialized. But I believe that you need to have these structural changes, such as reducing the public sector. Let's say in order to put our economy right, we need to aggressively get into the FTAs. For example, the former president, when I was at the foreign ministry, that we expressed our intent to join the RCEP. So as far as things such as trying to restructure the economy, I don't see that happening. And also you need to have these political changes, such as this government spoke of a new constitution. So new constitutions take a long time to deliberate. And of course, if you're serious about coming up with a new constitution, you need to do that at the earliest, because otherwise your popularity will wither away as time goes, and it will be very difficult to win a referendum. So things such as a new constitution, things such as devolution, they haven't really spoken much about. They have spoken about the economy. They have said that they will be giving relief to the people, which the people haven't seen. And they have been talking about this anti-corruption drive. But as far as the structural changes goes, I don't see that this government is very serious in implementing these structural changes. They recently announced that they want to hire 30,000 public servants. So you can see that these ideas of expanded public service is creeping in. So we are still during the honeymoon period. So let's give them time. But one thing I must say is that I think when compared with previous governments, I think from the very top there's a political will to curb corruption. So I think that's good, but I don't know how effective it will be.
It's said that there are a lot of objectives that are put in place. It's the rate of them achieving is a bit of a problem, is it? Or the materialization of said promises?
I mean, other than talk about anti-corruption drive, okay, now you can't, the corruption itself is, you can't, let's say, curb, there are different types of corruption, and then you need to curb them differently.
Yeah.
Let's say now, as far as the grand corruption is concerned, you have to have political will from the top. So let's say as far as systematic corruption is concerned, you need to have digitalization process. But corruption is also instrument of the economic well-being. So I always give this argument saying that, let's say I have 2 daughters, and if I don't have enough money to support my daughters, what would I do? If I can't buy them milk, or if they can't survive, then if I have to resort to a corrupt act, would I do that? I most probably would. So you have to address different issues pertaining to corruption differently. So at least I think but I think the president genuinely wants to try and reduce corruption. But that alone is not going to bring us economic prosperity. That's a good start, but we need to do more than that. We need to bring the economic reforms, we need to bring the political reforms, and we need to get into FTAs, and I think it's certainly changing like the political culture. The political culture is a subculture of the culture of the society. So unless you change the culture of the society, it's very difficult to change the political culture itself.
So the basket of things that have to work hand in hand for change to really happen.
Absolutely.
Right. Ms. Yapa, does your opinion also resonate with that of Mr. Balasuriya, or is it different?
No, actually, I agree with what he just said. But I must tell you that this government came into power by giving various promises to various sectors of the society. I think it is like you are reading Arabian Nights because you always see something good is happening at the end. So in such a situation, I think the government has an enormous responsibility, first of all, to fulfill those promises. The people are expecting that it will be happen very soon. That is what they said. In such a way, I must say that the economic revival is very important to fulfill those promises. Right? You can't give anything, something free of charge. No? You have to have some kind of a monetary value. So that has to be taken care of. As long as you don't get the economy at the correct path, I don't think anything can be done. Because in 2020 we have seen the downturn of the economy ultimately got into very bad memories we have seen those days. And I think even the present government came into power expecting that, as Tharaka put in very correctly, that certain actions of them to make sure that the country get into the proper place. Corruption drive is one thing, economic revival is some other thing, digitalization is the other thing. So in fact, the controlling or expanding the private sector to bring it to certain levels which will be sustainable to the country is also was some other thing. So in such a situation, I think unlike other governments, this government has lots of responsibility and expectations from the people. So if you go through this last 100 days or whatever the time that have gone between the presidential election and the general election or after that, I see that they actually toe the line of the previous government with regard to IMF
The agreement.
agreement. But what is necessary to do in the domestic sector reforms are not being taken seriously. Now, I think one such example is that they have halted the CB unbundling process completely. And I think they are not very keen to follow the domestic market reforms as well as government reform program. So that I think will be a thing that we'll have to wait and see. As Tharaka very correctly put it, we must not go into very harsh criticism with regard to government because it's a new government. People have placed their trust on them, and we will have to we will be waiting, and we are very eagerly expecting that certain things to be done for the correction of the economic revival of the country. If they cannot revive the economy, right? If they cannot bring more investments and more money and employment opportunities to this country, and also look after the younger generation of the country, hopefully they will have a tough time ahead.
But at the end of the day, it's up to the people to decide whether they actually...
Oh, it's up to the government to decide. Because government has the mandate, they'll have to perform, they'll have to do, and they will have to fulfill those promises that they have promised to people.
So it's a government that was built on a lot of promises, and it is now time for them to deliver.
Absolutely.
We have a bit of more deep diving into different sectors. We are about to talk about people, economy, sustainability of Sri Lanka and such and such. But before that, let's go for a short commercial break. This is TPS. Welcome back to TPS. We're now going to start off the discussion specifically looking into the aspects of people. The current government campaigned heavily on the fact that all layers of different hierarchy of people that is there in Sri Lanka will be treated fairly and just. The question is that true, or is that just another facade that the government has put up front to seem like the good guys? Mr. Yapa, your thoughts?
No, actually, any government that the people elected as well as elect, the prime responsibility is to look after the people. There are different segments. There are poor people, sick people, right, and corporate type of, big middle class people, upper middle class. There are different sectors, right. In such a situation that the government has to formulate policies to cater that will suit to all those sectors. So governing is not a easy thing.
Yeah.
And we will have to mind full about our income also. We are a country where income levels are very low, and our spending capacity is very low. And people expect that the government has to bear certain expenditure for them to bear. So in such situation, we have this free education system coming from generations, healthcare system coming from those two. I think one of the biggest and the best welfare method that we have adopted by every government, right? So now if you think any other country, even the socialist countries like China, I don't think they have this kind of health system, where if you go to any hospital in the country, then you will be treated equally, whether you are a poor or a wealthy or whatever it is, right? And school system also like that. You can enter into particular school and you can start your education and you can go to the university, and university up to university or entire university education is also free of charge. Can you imagine any other country where they give such facilities to people? So throughout after the independence, throughout the period, we have maintained that it is the prime duty of the government to look after the people, and irrespective of their what you call social standing. So this government is also promised the same thing, sometimes better. They will make it better. They will make things much easy. They will make that everything will be in fine line with the thinking of the people. So in such a situation, we will have to wait and see what they are going to do. We have not seen any kind of a what you call new programs are there. Say they have said that they will change the education system, but we have not seen anything happening. Then they are talking about new programs to be implemented in the public health sector. We don't see anything happening. Then transport sector. Then the education sector, especially tertiary and secondary education and university education. Those things needed a lot of changes. So I think they will have to do that, otherwise they will face issues, because people are expecting the expectation. When you have a higher level of expectations, right, you have to work tireless to fulfill those obligations within a short period of time. So that is the connection that the government and the people will expect. So unlike other governments, the people are expecting what you call rapid changes within a short period of time. So I don't think the government can do that, because in other way, it involves money. Where can we find money? So economic revival always comes first when it comes to so many other things. So without concentrating to accelerate the economic revival in the country, right? By getting new programs, new systems, new ways of earning money for the people and the country, nothing will change. Same old system will carry on.
In your own opinion, Mr. Yapa, you mentioned that every other government have also ensured that people were treated fairly, especially onto our education system, our healthcare system, which are top-notch in comparison to the rest of the world.
I must say even welfare.
Yeah. So, in those aspects, now the reason as to why the current government often mentioned that the people will be treated fairly is because there has been talks within the general public that there are some sectors of the public who have not been treated as fairly as others. In your political career and with the experience that you have, sir, do you think there was an issue like that to be addressed to begin with, or do you think it's something
Actually,
different?
any government will have to work with the public service. So when we formulate certain programs, the intention of the government, any government, would be to cater people without any political bias. I have never seen during our government that we have worked politically aligned to one side when it comes to giving something to people. But I think the biggest problem we have faced is finding data and the correct person. In that sense, I think there are some issues. Even now, I think, because to find out the welfare system, if to find out the exact lot who to be given is kind of a debatable point. What is the base that we have to take? Then who are above it, who are below it? So in that sense, I think it is much better to have a better data collecting from digitalization or something like that. Then there will be equal distribution, or fair distribution. But I must say we have done a lot to people, and fair distribution is always taken care of. There are few examples where some people might say that they will not get it because they have not been chosen. But I think government has taken care of, in the welfare system, most of the people that are deserved to be taken care of. When it comes to education, I think government has spent billions to make sure that the education system to be in par with other countries. But unfortunately, the government usually have around 10,000 schools. But we have seen only certain number is being elevated to levels where we expected that to be elevated to that level. So in such a situation, I think education sector needs more spending, more facilities to be given to people, the students, so that the entire 10,000 schools would be at the same level. But in the health sector, I think we have done a lot of things. Tremendous development in the health sector. Even if you go to a small hospital or to a general hospital or to any other mid-level hospitals, you have seen we have a superb system. Even what you call some sectors are excellent. So, but compared to our income levels, every government has done everything that is possible for the people, right? But if there are shortcomings, the new government can tackle it and find out that particular area, and they can, whatever they do, and do it in a more professional manner. So we will allow them to do that.
So the benchmark has been set, it's a matter of them continuing it.
Yes.
Mr. Balasuriya, what are your thoughts? Do you think the standard that was set by previous governments in terms of people treatment, welfare, education, and the holistic approach of taking care of the general public has been enough thus far? Or do you think there is improvement? If you think there is improvement to be made, do you think the current government is going down the right path?
Of course, there's improvement to be made. I think that's one of the reasons that they were brought into power. But I also think that you need to have the right policies. So I'm not sure whether, as far as the policies are concerned, whether this government is taking the right policies. Now, the Minister, Anura Priyadharshana Yapa, spoke about the free education, which is very important. And if you look at because we have a free health and healthcare system, our average life expectancy, I think, is somewhere in the range of 78, which is the same as in the United States. So those are achievements which we can be proud of, irrespective of the fact that the current government, when they were in opposition, said that all this 77 years has been miserable and nobody did anything to the public. But what about the freedom of education? Okay, not just the free education, but you also need to have the freedom of education. You need to have private universities. We spend about $2 billion overseas trying to educate our children. Now you have private hospitals. When you have private hospitals, there's also a benchmark for the government hospitals to be in to reach the same standards as those private hospitals. Similarly, if you have private universities, then there's a benchmark for the private for the government universities to make themselves better. So I think a lot in that on that aspect in terms of policy needs to be done, and I don't see the current government moving towards that the free market policies.
So, Mr. Parsi, you're connecting towards the rigidness of the current government in terms of privatizing.
Not privatization. I think I'm talking about freedom. I think it's the freedom to let's say engage in a business. The government saying no, only the government is going to be looking after education. Other people can't educate somebody. That's not correct. Let's take some of the finest universities, especially in the United States, are private universities. Okay, so I think you need to have changes in policy saying that you are going to encourage private universities to come more here. You need to have private hospitals coming in over here, so then the standards will increase. So it's not just about providing the service; it's also about the standard of the quality of the good which we receive. Now, certainly you have the public transportation. Just because you have the public transportation, when something like Uber or Pick Me started, it doesn't harm the people. It will only facilitate the people even further. But if I'm looking at it from a people's perspective, I think I have been somewhat hoodwinked because this government overpromised and they are under delivering at the moment. But they are just very one-dimensional to me. They're only talking about anti-corruption. They're saying that they're very simple and they're trying to overemphasize on simplicity. But as far as the policies go, I don't think that they're in the right path as pertaining to the policies. And I also tend to think from different community perspective. Let's take if I'm now this government got an unprecedented mandate never in the history of Sri Lanka. Let's take some electorates which are traditionally, let's take the Colombo Central, which has been UMP, it went to this government, Jaffna went to this government, the East went to this government, pretty much everybody voted for this government. Now, if I am somebody in north of Sri Lanka or the east of Sri Lanka, I'll be quite concerned about let's say the devolution and what ideas do they have on devolution. So when President went to Jaffna, all he spoke about was the giving the lands back to the people, which either way I think 90 to 95% of the lands have already been given back to the people. So and the government was making headway with the remaining land also. let's say if I'm a Muslim living in this country, I'll be concerned that with such a strong mandate to the government, there's no Muslim minister being represented in the government. So I think, and let's say if I'm, just a citizen of this country, I'll be somewhat disappointed, because how they spoke before the elections was that there's going to be immediate relief. That was the talk. Okay, so now we have 4-5 months have gone, and now what they're saying is that they're blaming the previous government for all what's bad, and they're trying to take credit for some of the programs, which have been implemented by the previous government. So I think with this approach, it's not healthy. People will get frustrated, and if relief doesn't come to the people, I think this government's period 2 can be numbered.
Of course, with in terms of relief to the people, I think we had over the weekend a nice testament to that. I believe the power shortage that we had, which could have been fixed quite well. But anyways, it's up to the people.
So that's first they blame the monkey, and then they say that it was the inefficient system of the which was adopted by the previous government. So I think you need to come to a point where you stop blaming the other government. They need to understand, they need to measure up, and they need to understand that's why they were brought into power. Okay, now it's time to deliver.
So enough with the blame game, it's about improvement here from out.
Absolutely.
All right, gentlemen, we have a bit more to discuss on the matters and the current affairs of, let's call it a quick scorecard of the current government. But before that, we'll be heading off for another short break. This is TPS. We'll be right back. Welcome back to TPS. We are at the final part of today's program, and we are heading towards a topic that has been the topic of discussion for quite some time in Sri Lanka. Governance and transparency when it comes to politics and managing our country. It has been a concern for a lot of individuals, especially the youth of Sri Lanka, to a point of where sometimes the youth have almost given up on politics and governance of Sri Lanka. So we'll ask the two gentlemen that we have here today their thoughts on whether corruption was exponentially there in Sri Lanka, and is the current government countering it, and do you see things any different? Let's start with you, Mr. Balasuriya.
Of course, there was corruption in Sri Lanka. Yeah, I think corruption is not only in Sri Lanka. Corruption is all over, and it's everybody's responsibility to try and see how you can reduce corruption. Now, if corruption is reduced, then we should see also other things, such as, let's say, for example, the customs. Then there was some report which stated that I think 30% or 40% of the revenues that should be collected is being collected. So if there's a reduction in corruption, then we need to see the increase in the revenue in those institutions also. But I think, as I mentioned, that you find corruption even in let's say the Western world, whereby it may be they call it special interest. Okay, but at the end of the day, it boils down to the same thing. And as far as the corruption goes, I think everybody needs to try and reduce it. As far as transparency goes, I don't know. Has this government been very transparent? I don't think so. Okay. Now, earlier there was. Now, also I was candid enough to state that the president has political will from the very top to reduce corruption, but that's not enough. Okay, because let's say if that person changes, okay, if another person comes, then what happens? Okay, then if that person doesn't, whoever comes afterwards doesn't have that same political will, then the corruption will be rampant again. So what's needed is you need to have legislation brought in order to curb corruption. So things such as, let's say now RW, he brought in the Anti-Corruption Act. So just talking about corruption is insufficient, and I think this government needs to spell out saying that what legislative measures they are going to take in order to reduce corruption. So I think there's a lot more which this and also I don't think that we need to have overplay on it also. Of course, we need to try and reduce corruption, but we need to get on with life. And we need to ensure that there's economic growth. As I mentioned before, that it's the corruption alone is not the single determinant of economic growth. So we need to bring these cultural changes. Those are those are things which will take a significant period of time. So my fear is that whether this government for the next 4 or 5 years they'll be talking about corruption, and then after that they say that okay, we have brought a change in the political culture, well, vote for us again. So in order for us to implement the second stage of our the actions that which we want to implement. So I'm not quite sure on that. So the best determinant of this government will be the people ultimately, whether they are happy. I think as a citizen you are in a good position, better than me. I'm a politician, so to judge whether after this government has come into power, whether your lifestyle has improved, or whether things are more prosperous now. So I think the stabilizing the economy part of it, RW did that before this government came into power, and they're just continuing with President Wickremesinghe's policies. So as I said, let's wait and see. It's still the honeymoon period. There's a lot which they promise, as the Minister Anura Priyadharshana Yapa said, but they haven't delivered yet, and it will be a tall order. It will be a tall order to satisfy different communities, different people, and different aspirations, because they promised a lot.
They actually wanted to give a bigger picture. It's just a matter of whether they deliver it or not.
Well, I mean, in all honesty, I don't think they can deliver it. Okay, so certainly not everything which they promised. That's why I said that in a very Machiavellian way, that it is pragmatic, because you come to power stating something and you grab power, but then you do what you want to do. So after let's say the local council elections and then the provincial council elections, I think that's when we will really get to see the nature of this government.
Now, sending the same question to you, Mr. Yapa. You've been in this game for quite some time. You've been part of the government, you've been part of the opposition, you know how everything plays out. Now, the current government, their manifesto mentioned that there's a lot of corruption that's within the political parties in Sri Lanka and in the then government and the years of the previous governments that were there. In your opinion, do you think that was really the case? Is corruption as bad as they mention it to be at that stance? And if so, had that been the case or not, are they really doing the necessary actions to reduce the corruption that is available?
But the present government, when they were campaigning, they have said that if you stop corruption in the country's problems will be over. Right? That means even smallest corrupt practice they can stop. Then they told their people that then there will be lot of development for the country, because that money can be used for the people-centric programs. But I think, as my friend just mentioned, that corruption is one part, right? It's not the only and the last part. So every government has done or tried somewhat their best to control corruption in the country. Corruption has not completely done away with any other countries, even including China, Vietnam, or anywhere, right? But what they have done was they have developed systems where if a corrupt practice is known, then the law will take its course and then find the person and then do whatever the law requires them to do. Even Sri Lanka, I think the last government has done a good thing by giving more powers to anti-corruption commission, that is, and for them to investigate of their own if there are corrupt practices in the country. But what is corruption? I think corruption is, one thing is you siphon money from the government or not collecting money that is due to the government. Or don't you think inaction is also part of it? If you don't do something which is to be done and you delay it, I think it is also part of corruption. Then what happens? So in such a situation, I think it is much better, rather than talking, coming out with tools that are being used in other countries to control corruption in many areas of the institution. So they only blame the politicians, no? If that is so, that kind of politicians are no longer there. They are being defeated. So they have a new set of people. So they can control that part. What about the other sides? Right? Right? From the public sector, from the private sector, right? So those things has to be done with correct policies and new programs. Otherwise you can't control. But in Sri Lanka, I again would like to reiterate that corruption is not the only problem. Right? We have not adopted, changed, and willing to change the policies that we have seen throughout to make sure that we will have a better economic revival. Unless you don't do it, this same problem will persist and will be there forever. Now if you take the example of India, India is a country where they are progressing at a very fast rate for the last 10 years. So because of that, the government is repeatedly re-elected. In the recent Delhi state elections, the party in power became the ruling party. So how are they going to do that? They have completely transformed the economy to one of the world's biggest economies. I think it's third or fifth economy in the world. So people are happy. How people are happy is that if the government is performing well and if the people are getting money and if people can get things done easily, then people are happy. Rather than talking, I urge the government to take that step, rather blaming someone, no type of people that they have done this, that, and yes, they can use the arm of law to control that. But otherwise, they'll have to reform certain areas. Now, they'll have to reform Sri Lanka customs. They'll have to reform income tax department. They'll have to reform other government agencies, so that it will automatically, the money will be collected, government will have money, then they can spend it for welfare of the people. What are the other methods? Only talking about corruption will do nothing. It's only a rhetoric. I think it's not the way. They'll have to provide us with new policies, new guidelines, new tools, so that the people will have a better life and a better future.
I think the gist of the situation is that though corruption is something that needs to be handled, reduced, it is not exactly the entire problem. There's so much more that the country needs in terms of economic revival, restructuring, and so much more the country can improve. And I feel like the two gentlemen would agree with me when I say that their opinions on the matter is the fact that even though it's one part to the problem, total focus should not be given there. The country still has to run. The country still has to develop. It's up to the government to ensure that they keep up to their promises while ensuring that the remaining factors are also kept stable. So thank you so much to the both of you gentlemen. I think we've covered, this is a very broad topic that we could go on and on talking about, but I think the essence of what both of your opinions and what that you believe in the government could achieve, and then I love the fact that the both of you were like, we'll give them time to see how they can really work out to it, because at the end of the day, it's our country that needs to benefit. So thank you so much for Minister of Parliament, Anura Priyadharshana Yapa for joining us for today's discussion. And of course, his peer, thank you so much, former Minister of Parliament, Mr. Tharaka Balasuriya, for joining us as well. And of course, a thank you to our wonderful audience as well. We sincerely hope today's discussion, instead of a debate like last time, would have enlightened you into the current affairs of Sri Lanka and how others would actually take care of the country had they had the power. Should things change differently? Do you agree with their opinions, or what more do we have to discuss? We'll catch you next week with another episode of TPS where we discuss/debate the most important topics of Sri Lanka. See you next time.
I wanna hide the truth, I wanna shelter you, but with the beast inside, there's nowhere we can hide. No matter what we breed, we still are made of greed. This is my kingdom come, this is my kingdom come. When you feel my heat, look into my eyes, it's where my demons hide, it's where my demons hide. Don't get too close, it's dark inside, it's where my demons hide, it's where my demons hide. Curtains call, it's the last of all. When the lights fade out, all the sinners crawl. So they dug your grave, and the masquerade will come calling out at the mess you made. Don't want